Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, because we are kicking off our 29th year, I interview poets and other writers about their craft, what they've accomplished, what they're planning for the future. It's a very wide net. We have, besides poets, all kinds of novelists and documentary writers, journalists, and even other brands of artists. We have had on sculptors, musicians, actors. So if you have an idea for a guest who might be good for the Writer's Block, either a poet, other brand of writer, or even an outside artist, watch for our address at the end of the show. We'd be glad to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you that this program, the Writer's Block, and all the other original programming that comes out of 1623 Studios is a product of cable access television. You stick with cable. You don't want to miss this show or any of the others. Tonight we are kicking off the 29th year with, as we have done for several years, the student poet winners of the Poetry Without Paper contest run by the Lyceum at the library and completed last spring. This is the most exciting show of the year for me to talk about these young poets who are excited about writing and reading and get the semester or the season off to a real good, solid start. I'm going to read at the beginning all of the winners and all of the honorable mentions so that everybody gets a real good shout out whether they could be here tonight or not. Now, I'm going to start with the elementary winners. They are Josie West for They Call Her Moses, Hannah Olson for Blossom, and Alexis Thomas for The Big Trip. All of the elementary school winners are here this evening, and we'll be talking to them shortly. The middle school winners, honorable mentions. Gabriella McKierney for The Good Place, Beatrix Brosnahan for Story, and Evelyn Porter for Boat on the Ocean. In the middle school category, the first place winner was Elijah Saruf for Back Then. Second place, Chandra Lavery for Evanescence. Third place, Seth Grover for Word Entanglement. The honorable mentions for middle school are Clara Del Vecchio, The Scent of Jasmine, Sean Bergen, Freedom, Gabriella Amaral for Little Star, and Willowberry for Painted World. Now the big kids, the high school students. First place, Willa Brosnahan for Cafe Lamieros. Second place, Eric Waxtall for Graveyard Shift. Third place, Catherine Bevins for Photosynthesis of a Relationship. Both Willa and Catherine will be here with us momentarily. The honorable mentions are Mila Berry for Another Birthday, Sophia Palumbo for Recess, and Jocelyn Schulman for Visions of Gideon. We have a big live audience of family members, and I'm going to ask them to give all of these poets and honorable mentions a big hand. Would you do that? I forgot to mention that all the middle school poets, Elijah and Chandra and Seth, are here, and they will be here in a few minutes. On my left, Willa Brosnahan, the first place winner for Cafe Lamieros. And you were in ninth grade at Gloucester High last year. You are in 10th now.
Yes.
And Eric Waxtall, the second place winner, had the nerve to go away to college. So he is not with us here this evening, I'm sorry to say. But we do have the third place winner, Catherine Bevins, for her poem, Photosynthesis of a Relationship. I'll start with you, Catherine. I'm going to ask you a tough question.
Okay.
What are you reading now?
Right now,
For the fun of it.
for the fun of it, I have a lot of required reading. I'm in AP language.
Okay,
So,
well, shoot on the required.
this summer I read starting Between the World and Me, and All Souls, and Words Like Loaded Pistols.
Words like, I don't know that. Who's that?
It's all about rhetoric. Yes.
Was it exciting?
No.
An honest woman.
Yeah, it was tough to read because in some senses they tried to make it funny, and you can't make rhetoric funny.
Well, you just did. What were you reading this summer, Willa?
Ooh. I've been reading a lot of Maxine Kumin. She's one of my favorite poets.
You like her?
Yes. This summer I also read Love in the Time of Cholera, which I really enjoyed.
Wow, Marquez.
Yeah. I can't think of many other books off the top of my head. I read The Great Gatsby for school. But
Did you like that? Did you see the movie?
no.
No. I want to ask you, who influenced you to write poetry, and or who is an important teacher in your high school background? Willow.
Well, I think the first time I really started writing poetry was in like 3rd and 4th grade. And the teacher I had then, her name was Mrs. Fleming. She's one of my favorites.
Okay, let's hear it from Mrs. Fleming, okay? Teachers are very important, very important. Thank you for mentioning Mrs. Fleming. Now, Catherine.
Mine is Miss Danaher. She was my
Oh,
seventh
Miss
grade.
Danaher.
Yes.
Oh, please, Miss Danaher. Miss Danaher's name comes up here.
Yeah, she told
very
every single 7th grader she had that they had to submit a piece of poetry, and everyone would say to each other like, "Oh, we'll never like make it, like we'll never get in." And then that year, I got honorable mention, and she told me that I had to keep on submitting.
Very good for Mrs. Danaher. Good. Her name comes up here often. I would like you both to read your poems. Would you read yours first, Willa,
Sure.
for us?
Café Lemieros. The four sit at the table, outside the cafe, the women perched on the knees of their men, underwear showing neon through tight pants, hair loose and dark against their skin. There is a symmetry to it, the way the shoulders slump down to the table, work-worn hands, brown with sun, resting on the lower backs of their women. There is such splendor in the four at the table, with their laughter, the goodness of touch unabashed. They are the truth as they sit in the shade, the hills around them green and dotted with ruins, the skeleton cork trees, the living drinking coffee and the dead stacked in their graves. A child giving fresh dirt to the worms of her mother. And here are these women, perched on the knees of their men, beautiful, belonging to the countryside, belonging to the dead and to their children. And the four at the table, they look like modern art, painted by someone who changed everything.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you for that. Café Lamieros. Catherine, would you please read for us Photosynthesis of a Relationship?
Photosynthesis of a relationship. When she met him, something was different. He was not like any of the others. He was pure and gentle. They were young. But for some reason, she fell for him. She fell for the way he admired her and not her body. He made her laugh. He was cute. Not like, OMG, he is so hot, but for the I can't stop thinking about him way. They talked, and he held her hand, and something for once seemed right. There was something about his innocence that made her feel safe. But it didn't take long for him to change his mind. She opened up, only for him to judge her and leave her. And now, years later, she thought to herself, now I'm the one that would beg for a chance, but he is a flower, and I am only the clouds that deprive him of the sun.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful stuff, and one of the things that I'm always reminded of on these student poetry evenings is that the idea that kids write only about the Red Sox or other typical topics is not true. This is heavy-duty stuff. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have to rush along, so I'm going to ask the middle school students to come up. Elijah Saruf, Chandra Lavery, and Seth Grover, please. Elijah, will you sit there on my far left? And Chandra, would you sit in the middle, please? Thank you. And Seth, at the end. Welcome to the writer's block. You're not nervous at all, are you? Huh? No. I want to ask you some of the same difficult questions I asked the high school students, put you on the spot, because I'm always interested in what students are reading. I'm very grateful that some students are reading. Elijah, what are you reading this summer?
I read the Alex Rider books, which are pretty good.
Tell us about those. It's mysteries?
Kind of. They're like, this kid whose uncle worked for MI6, and
The British spy office.
yeah. And so like he has to go on all these adventures. It's pretty cool.
Was that for school or just for the fun of it?
For the fun of it.
Are you
My
reading
friend
anything else
recommended
for school right now?
it. Not yet.
Yeah.
No.
Chandra, what do you read?
I'm
Summer?
currently reading Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. It's
What's-
Japanese name, so I might not say it correctly.
Say that again?
Never Let Me Go.
And what's that about?
Well, it's about these kids in boarding school, and it starts off as realistic fiction. It's slowly turning into dystopian.
You like it?
Mhm.
Are you reading anything for school?
Not right now.
Not yet. Mr. Grover, what are you reading?
Well, over the summer, I read, there were 2 books I had to read because I got into honors English.
Good, congratulations.
I can't remember either of them.
So they weren't so good.
They were, like, realistic. I don't really like realistic books.
They were like reporting contemporary scenes.
One of them was a biography, and the other one was, realistic fiction. I prefer, like, fantasy, like Harry Potter. And
Harry
stuff.
Potter?
Yeah,
Have you watched all the Harry Potter movies?
I have not.
Oh, really? No? I haven't either, but that's one of my goals. I wish I had been 10 when they started, because they look good. They're a lot of fun.
Do.
Have you read the Harry Potter novels?
I've read some of them. I could never really get through all of them.
But you like them. That's good. Now, I'll start with my second question. I'll start with you, Seth. Do you watch TV ever? And if you do, just in case you ever watch TV, what do you watch?
Well, like I said, I'm not really a fan of realistic stuff, so I often find myself watching an animated TV show called Bob's Burgers.
What is it, Bob?
Bob's Burgers.
Bob's Burgers. I've seen that listed. I've never watched it.
It's good.
It's good?
I like it.
I'll try it on your recommendation. Now, I want to hear the poems. If you would please, Elijah, read your poem, Back Then, for us.
Back then, when the flowers bloomed, so bright, so beautiful, when the bees would chant in buzzing tones and collect and pollinate, we were so scared the bees would sting, but that was all back then. Back then, we basked in summer sun and hid between the rocks, built in the mud castles of miniature, then cool off in the blanket of turquoise. We would go on a walk or run or climb away, but that was all back then. Back then the leaves would jump off the trees and fall to the ground in vibrant reds and yellows. The wind would carry them all away while coaxing you, "Let us take you with us." Can you hear them? Do you listen? But that was all back then. Back then the winter snow would glow, so bright, so beautiful. You put on the mittens, the hats, the boots, and jump into the veil of white. We would skate across the frozen ice, but that was all back then. I remember those days, back then. I remember the flowers blooming, and the summer sun and the wind come to take us away. I remember the snow, but I have a question. Do you remember? Do you recall what we did back then?
Very nice. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Elijah. Chandra, would you please read for us Evanescence?
Evanescence. I walk the small path I have found, wondering, has my stay been too long? The ground under my feet tells me that I am unwelcome. My hands are tied tightly, the skin of my wrist raw, the ache for satisfaction, the feeling of bliss. Barely in reach, there is a library of open-ended questions, with answers I cannot understand. Words rot in my mouth, they beg to be spoken, talons claw at my cheeks. Blood drips, boils, my poison. The path has vanished, my visit has come to an end. My skeleton has crumbled to dust, the remains blowing away in the breeze. Invisible monsters laugh and taking what little I have, but nothing was truly mine.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Now, the third poem. Seth, would you read for us Word Entanglement, please?
A word entanglement. Poetry is like the songs of writing, specific types for different themes, words too intricate for books, entwined together in perfect bonded stanzas. Certain sounds made for each other, coinciding to simply sound nice. If used correctly, you can say a million things in just one sentence, using words to convey meaning. That's the meaning of poetry, to sound nice or to look smart. But to convey meaning? Entangling different words together in a consecutive order and in a numberable amount of words to say something you could have said in 5. That is poetry.
Good definition. Thank you very much. Again, we got some serious, heavy-duty, excellent poetry. Not what people think of students writing. Thanks again. And congratulations. Now, if you elementary or middle stars would take your seats again with your families, and I'm going to ask the elementary students to come up, please. Josie West, Hannah Olson, and Alexis Thomas. Josie, would you sit here on my far left, and Hannah in the middle, and Alexis on my right? Good evening. You know the routine by now, and you're not nervous at all, are you? Good, good. I'm going to ask you the same difficult questions because I'm always interested in what students are reading. I'll start on this side first. Alexis, what are you reading right now?
Over the summer, I read Stella by Starlight. It was about this girl living in Bumblebee, South Carolina during the Jim Crow laws, and she was black. And it's a very, very entertaining book.
Entertaining?
Entertaining, yes.
It sounds kind of tough, too.
It's tough, but in a good way. Like it's an entertaining. I love those kind of like realistic, historical kind of books.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a very, very good book.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. Now I want to put Hannah on the spot. What are you reading, Hannah?
So, I know I read books over the summer, but I can't remember all of them. But for my summer reading, I read Orphan Island. It was
It's called Orphan
Island.
Orphan Island.
I thought it was kind of slow, but
Is it a mystery or?
it wasn't a mystery. I think it would be considered it is fiction, but I don't think it's realistic, but it might be realistic.
Who's the
can't
author
really-
of that? I don't know that book.
I think it's Laurel Snyder.
I don't know that. But not so hot, huh?
I thought it was slow, but
Okay. That's enough. That's a wise statement. Josie, what were you reading this summer?
Well, over the summer, I read The Time Quintet by Madeleine L'Engle, and I really liked it.
What's the title again?
The Time Quintet, A Wrinkle in Time, and
The Time
Quintet.
Quintet.
Yes. A Wrinkle in Time, and then the 4 books that go after it. And then for my summer reading, I read Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson, which is told in poems.
Poems. So are you interested in time manipulation?
Sometimes. It depends
Oh,
on,
very good.
It depends on the kind of book, the kind of manipulation of time.
Good. I'm glad to hear you're all reading serious stuff. And you never watch TV, do you, Alexis?
No.
When you don't absolutely never watch TV, what do you watch?
Mostly animated TV shows.
Bob's Burgers? No.
No, not that one. I also like game shows. I kind of
Really?
yeah.
Which one? Jeopardy?
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
Jeopardy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun because my family will try to figure out what the question is before the person dings it in. So that becomes kind of like a family, we make
So
Jeopardy.
all of you sit around and compete. for the answer?
Play Jeopardy. Yeah.
Good. Hannah, what do you watch TV if you ever do?
Watch this baking show we found.
What?
A baking show.
The Great British
No.
British Baking Show, by any chance?
It's not, I don't know. Well, we think it's filmed in Canada, but we're not sure. We found it on a website, so we watch it off our computer.
Yeah. It's hard to tell where things come from sometimes. I don't know. Now I want to ask Josie what you are watching if you ever, besides this show, besides the Writer's Block.
Well, I actually do not have a television, but I do like to watch on Friday nights the Great British Baking Show with my family. I love that show.
Say that again?
I love to watch the Great British Baking Show with my
Oh,
family.
you do?
Yes.
Oh. I occasionally see some of that because it's before a mystery that I watch. Do you feel sorry for the people that don't win?
No.
No?
No.
My heart goes out to some of those people that work so hard. Now, I want to talk finally about the teachers, because teachers are so important. We congratulate you and we congratulate the parents, but the teachers got to get some. So give me a teacher's name who's been an influence on you, Josie.
I loved both Miss Parkhurst and Miss Monroe in 5th grade.
Say that again.
Miss Parkhurst and Miss Monroe in 5th grade.
Miss Parker's
And Miss Monroe.
and Miss Monroe. Miss Parker, Miss Monroe, 5th grade. Hannah.
So, Miss Amadon, this poem is part of a slideshow that was a project we were doing in her class. So,
What's her name again? Miss Amadal?
yeah.
Let's hear from-
Amadon. Dawn.
Amadon.
Yeah.
Miss Amadon. Alexis.
The teacher that encouraged me to write this poem and to submit this poem to the poetry contest, her name was Miss Shanks.
Miss Shanks.
She's my 5th grade teacher, yes.
5th grade, okay, Miss Shanks. Thank you for naming those teachers. Josie, would you read your poem, They Called Her Moses, please?
They called her Moses. Harriet Tubman, 1820 to 1913. Small girl, age 7, rough linen shirt over black body, deep sober eyes, scared, clip clop, being sold. For 23 years, scars crisscross her back. She watches sisters, brothers sold off, fearful. It will be her next. Following the night, slips of paper guide her to strangers' houses. Stop by stop, she finds her way to freedom. Free, but she can't rest. She dreams dreams, receives visions, answers to prayers, answers showing her the way to protecting her people. Silently, she slinks through the underbrush. Silently, she glides along the ground. Knock, knock, secret password. A friend of friends. Inside, food, hope, light. 10 years, 19 trips, 300 slaves, not one passenger lost.
Thank you very much. Hannah, would you read for us Blossom?
Blossom. Blushing with color, lush flowers fill the fragrant meadow, opening to feel the sun's sweet rays, showing the world their beautiful colors, stars on the earth, orchids, dandelions, and buttercups. Many bees come to visit, humming gentle tunes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hannah. Finally, a poem called The Big Trip by Alexis Thomas.
I'm on a trip, here's what I'd take. Amazing antelopes running down their troubles,
Bunches of baboons all blowing bubbles, Christmas trees and light bulbs, extras couldn't hurt, dogs in different colored skirts, elephants eating my brand new shirts, fudgicles that taste like no other, grape juice for my baby brother, helicopter propellers, real ones nonetheless. I could bring my makeup to look the best. Just a few more things that I'd bring. Kangaroos playing with a piece of string, little ballerinas in perfect rows, minnows with pink polka-dotted bows, a new pair of pants that are blue, octopi with charm bracelets too, penguins with suits all waddled to and fro, queen bees and fake trees with a ball to throw, rusted old screws with a sharp winding edge, screens from windows that dropped into a hedge, twisted twizzlers for snacking on, umbrellas when dreary weather goes on, very old men that are all named John, wind pants for when it gets cold, xylophones to make my entrance bold, yodelers with bagpipes in hand. Zeke came with the marching band. And within all of that hustle and bustle, all of that's just in my duffel.
Thank you very much, all three of you from elementary school. I'm going to close the show. I'd like you to stay right there while I close the show. I want to thank all the student poets who are here or who appeared already. I want to thank all the parents. You should be very, very proud of your children. This is really a joy for me to see so much talent and so much energy and so much excitement. And I want everybody to be remembering the teachers too and be proud of them. Thanks for being with us. I'm very happy that this could be again our kickoff show for the season. I want to thank you in TV land for being with us here on the Writer's Block. If you've learned something about student poets here on Cape Ann and their energy and their talent, their wide reading, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.